I never thought the quiet lakeside property I bought would turn into a battlefield. When I first saw the place, 5 acres of woods sloping down to a private dock, I thought I'd found a piece of peace after 20 years of military service. My wife Laura loved the cabin, the water, the promise of summers spent watching the sunset over still water. For me, it was the first time since retiring that I felt like I could breathe. No drills, no briefings, no deployments, just quiet. That illusion didn't last long. It started on a Thursday morning when I walked outside and found men in reflective vests hammering survey stakes into my yard. Bright plastic ribbons fluttered in the breeze across my driveway and down toward the lake. I stopped one of them. Kid couldn't have been older than 20, and asked what he thought he was doing. HOA development project, he said without looking up, like it was obvious I should know. I didn't. We weren't part of any homeowners association when I bought the land. That was the entire point. Freedom. No meddling board dictating what color mailbox I could have. Yet, when I drove up the road that afternoon, I saw a brand new sign posted at the entrance to our neighborhood. Lakewood Community HOA Development Zone. That night, Laura and I found a glossy packet stuffed into our mailbox. Future of Lakewood, it said in bold letters. Inside were slick renderings of a community recreation complex, paved walking paths, a drone demonstration center, a retail plaza, even a floating dock with public access. According to their documents, 78% of the community supported the plan. I stared at the page in disbelief. Nobody had asked me. None of our closest neighbors mentioned anything about a survey. Saturday, I got my first look at the woman behind it all. Her name was Evelyn Sharp, though everyone quickly started calling her just Evelyn, as if she were a celebrity. She showed up at my door with our HOA president trailing behind like an obedient dog. He mumbled through some prepared remarks about revitalization, while she smiled like a shark, sliding a folder across my kitchen table. Think of what this will mean for your community, she said smoothly. Jobs, revenue, safer streets, rising property values. She talked fast, stacking numbers and charts in front of me. 1.3 million in annual tax revenue, 200 construction jobs, 90 permanent staff positions. She made it sound like salvation. I'd seen that kind of pitch before, though in a different uniform. Evelyn wasn't chatting, she was running an operation. The way her eyes flicked around my living room, cataloging everything, the way she asked what times Laura and I left for work, where we shopped, how often we traveled. It wasn't neighborly curiosity, it was intelligence gathering. I told her no, flat no. My property wasn't for sale, wasn't for lease, wasn't part of anyone's development scheme. Her smile never wavered, but her eyes hardened. Sometimes, she said, a single family has to think about the greater good. The following week, the harassment began. Trucks accidentally blocked our driveway at 7 in the morning. Construction equipment rattled past the house before dawn. My mailbox was forced open, letters scattered, and in the middle of the mess sat a county notice, a preliminary development assessment for my property. I hadn't requested it. It was already filled out with soil notes and drainage data no one should have had. The contact number listed belonged to Evelyn Sharp. Laura, God bless her, wasn't one to sit quietly. She started documenting everything, license plates of investors visiting Evelyn's house, photographs of survey crews trespassing on our land, drone flights buzzing over our roof at midnight. The more she gathered, the clearer the picture became. This wasn't a local project. Evelyn had out-of-state money backing her, men in suits with Chicago and Columbus plates, meetings that stretched past midnight. Neighbors I'd once shared beers with turned cold. One of them, Doug, ran a struggling construction company and confessed Evelyn had offered him contracts if he supported her. Another, Carol, a school board member, said property taxes from the project could save teaching jobs. They weren't villains, they were desperate, and desperation is the sharpest weapon in any manipulator's arsenal. The breaking point came at a community meeting. Evelyn stood in front of a projector with her charts and surveys, painting a picture of prosperity if we just sacrificed underutilized parcels like mine. She unveiled a contamination report claiming my soil was tainted with petroleum and needed remediation. I knew it was fake, I'd tested it myself. She was staging evidence to justify seizure. When I stood to speak, to present photographs of drones violating FAA rules, the microphone mysteriously cut out. The crowd grew restless as I tried to explain. Laura shouted that the process was rigged, and security hauled her out while neighbors cheered. By the end, Evelyn had whipped them into such a frenzy, they voted overwhelmingly to fast-track property seizure. Only me, Laura, and one elderly vet voted against it. Walking out of that hall felt like walking out of a funeral. Friends avoided my eyes. People I'd helped dig cars out of snowdrifts muttered that I was selfish. Evelyn had turned my community against me, with nothing but slick lies and desperation. I still had one advantage. I knew airspace. My military career had been built on coordinating flight corridors and preventing unauthorized aircraft from entering restricted zones. And something about Evelyn's drone operations set my alarm bells ringing. The patterns Laura photographed weren't casual hobbyist flights. They were systematic, mapping blind spots, testing radar response. I made a discreet call to a former colleague at Wright Pat. His tone changed the moment I mentioned drone signatures. "Those aren't toys," he said after checking the data. "They're gathering military intelligence. If they're staging from your property, we've got a national security problem." I didn't sleep that night. The grand opening of Evelyn's facility came 3 days later. Local news showed up. Investors too. Families gathered on what used to be quiet land to celebrate a future built on lies. I knew what else was coming. Tuesday at 10:30, the Air Force ran low-level training runs right through this corridor. At 10:25, Evelyn's team launched their demonstration drone, climbing past 800 feet. At 10:28, contrails appeared on the horizon. F-16s, right on schedule. My stomach dropped. I sprinted toward the control tent. "Abort now," I shouted. Some young operator sneered that I had no authority. That was when I dropped my military ID on the table and barked in the command voice I hadn't used in years. "Deputy Commander, Airspace Security, shut it down now." He hesitated, so I grabbed the emergency radio and called the jets myself. "Phantom Leader, break right immediately. Civilian drone at your 12 o'clock high." The crowd gasped as 2 F-16s roared overhead, banking hard, shockwaves shattering windows. Children screamed, parents ducked. The drone passed within 50 feet of them before veering off. 50 feet from killing 2 pilots and raining wreckage across the community. Silence fell like a hammer. Evelyn tried to spin it, but the cameras had captured everything: the near collision, my warning, the panic. Tom, one of the teachers who'd voted against me, stood and shouted, "He just saved lives." "What the hell were you thinking, Evelyn?" Within hours, the FAA grounded all operations. Federal agents swarmed the site. Investors screamed at Evelyn as liability insurance evaporated. Neighbors who'd called me selfish were suddenly apologizing, faces pale with what almost happened. Social media turned on a dime. From greedy veteran blocks progress to retired officer saves town from aviation disaster. But the real revelation came later that night. Colonel Hayes from Wright Pat pulled me aside. "Those drones weren't just reckless," he said. "They were collecting radar response data worth millions to foreign buyers. Evelyn was a front. You exposed an espionage op. I thought it was over. Evelyn arrested, the HOA humiliated, neighbors ashamed." But a week later, as Laura and I drove home, a black sedan tailed us for 30 miles. Never too close, never too far. That night, an encrypted message arrived on my secure phone. Only 5 people in the world had that channel. The message contained a photo of Evelyn in custody, smiling. Beneath it, Phase 1 complete, initiating Phase 2. "Thank you for your cooperation." I stared at the screen, cold spreading through me. I hadn't beaten them. I'd just played my part in a bigger game. The weeks that followed were chaos. The feds tore apart TechSpire Solutions, the company funding Evelyn. Lawsuits flew, executives vanished. Neighbors tried to make amends. Doug confessed publicly that Evelyn had exploited his debts. Carol admitted she'd been manipulated with promises of school funding. Even the HOA president resigned, muttering he'd never really been in charge. My land was restored under federal protection, replanted, repaired. Laura's rose garden bloomed again. But every time I looked at that cornfield, I remembered the encrypted message. Someone had orchestrated all of this. Someone's still out there. A year later, I received a newspaper in the mail from a town 200 miles away. The headline celebrated a community drone project bringing jobs, and in the photo was a woman who looked exactly like Evelyn under a different name, smiling that same shark smile. I picked up the secure phone. "Hayes," I said when he answered. "It's happening again." Because once you've seen how the game is played, you realize it never really ends. The HOA wasn't just a nuisance, it was a weapon. And people like Evelyn, they were just the visible tip of something much darker. I'd thought retirement meant peace. Instead, it meant realizing my fight wasn't over. The battlefield had just changed, and this time, I wasn't going to let them use my community as a pawn ever again.